Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If this is your first time, you're welcome here. So on today's tutorial, we're going to be making this circle dress with a heater neckline. All right, let's get right in. So I have my fabric here, which is 3 yards. All right, so it's divided into 1.5 yards. Okay, it's 1.5, 1.5. All right, so we'll be using one part first. So I have my bias here, which I'll be using for the armhole. All right, so I just went ahead now to fold my fabric, my first fabric, into an A-line shape. All right, so I folded it this way. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to go ahead and measure my shoulder line. All right, my shoulder line is 8. Okay, so I'm just going to add 1 inch to it for allowance. So I went ahead to just mark out the line where our shoulder is going to start from. All right, so then I went ahead to measure the full length. So the full length of this gown is 42, so I'm just going to mark out 36 now. Remember, we're going to add extra at the bottom. There's going to be a printing at the bottom, which is 6. All right, so I'm marking out 36 now for the half length. So I mark out 36, then I went ahead to mark out my bust point. My bust point is 10, so I just mark it out there from the shoulder line. Remember, from the shoulder line. Okay, I went up by 2 inches from here, so we are going to create our chest line from this line. All right, so this line now, this new line is our chest line. All right, next thing I did was to mark out the neckline. So for the depth I used 3, and for the width I used 2.5. all right, I used 2.5 here. Then I just went ahead to mark out, all right, to give it a circle with my chalk. All right, so I went ahead to measure the shoulder line. So it's still 8. From there I just went ahead to give it a curve to the neckline. All right, I hope you can see what I'm doing. From that chest line, all right, I went ahead to just give it a curve to the neckline. All right, so the next thing I did, I went ahead to divide my bust measurement into 4 and added 2 inches to it for allowance, and also the same thing for the bust, for the chest line and for the bust point. Okay, so I just went ahead now to trace this line down to my length of the gown. Okay, so I trace it out and then I cut out these parts. So you can decide to cut out this way, or you can decide to cut it straight. So I brought in the back fabric, leaving 1 inch allowance for zipper. Okay, so I went ahead to just mark out the shoulder line, and from the shoulder line I came down by 1 inch. So I'm going to be using 1.5 inch, but I'm marking 1 inch. After sewing, we're going to be having 1.5 inch. Okay, so I just traced it out from the front shoulder line, and I also trace out the back shoulder line using the front part. So this is what we have after cutting both sides. All right, so see, when you are cutting out your circle dress and you have places where this cloth didn't get to, don't be bothered. You just have to add to it. So this is what we have after I have added to the parts that wasn't covered. the next thing I'm going to do now is to bring out my bias, and I'm going to be hemming the shoulder part. Okay, so I'll just go ahead now, use my bias, the right side facing the wrong side of my fabric, then I turn. This is what we're going to have after turning. So I did same for every other part. So this is what we have after turning for both shoulder, both the front and the back. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to slit the zipper allowance. Okay, so remember we left 1 inch for the zipper allowance, so I just went ahead to fix the zip, and this is what we have. All right, so the next thing we're going to do now is to bring back our front fabric, and then we're going to measure the neckline, measure round the neckline. So I measured the back neckline was giving me 8, and the front neckline also gave me 8 too. So altogether is 16. Alright, so we're going to break our band now. I'm going to be cutting this band 2 inches wide. Alright, so we need just 1.5 inch, so we're going to be cutting it 2 inches wide. So we're using 1/2 inch allowance to sew both sides. Alright, so I cut out using 17. Remember we have 8 at the front and 8 at the back, which is 16. So I'm using 17, 1 inch, half for the sewing allowance for both sides. So this is what we have, 17. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do now is to turn this band and mark the center point. All right, and then go ahead to your sewing machine and just stitch for this both side. Okay, so I brought in my fabric, and then just pinch it a little bit using your sewing needle, or you can just pinch it with your sewing machine in order not to lose track of the shoulder line. I went ahead to put in the neck band. Okay, what I did was I used the right side of the band facing the wrong side of the fabric, because I'm going to be turning it out to the front. So I just went ahead now to place this band around the neckline of my fabric. So just go ahead now and sew round. So this is what we have after sewing round. Okay, so I went ahead to just add a little fabric for button. Okay, you can, this one is optional, you can decide to leave it or just add a pin to it. So after sewing, you just go in and then you turn like this. You turn like this. Okay, so you turn, make sure your turning are very straight, and then you go ahead and sew round the neckline. All right, so this is what we have after sewing the neckline. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do now is just to close the side of our fabric. You can decide to add pocket to it. Okay, so you go ahead now and sew, and you also stitch down for the other side. So after stitching, so this is what we have, and then you go ahead, turn it around, and then we're going to measure round the flare of our fabric, and whatever you have, you're going to cut double of it for your plinth. So this is what I have. So what I have here was about 100 inches, so I went ahead to just cut 200 inches. So I'm going to go ahead now and start printing this other fabric to the end point of my flare, and then just go ahead to my sewing machine and print this way. Remember, we're printing only the long fabric. You print it around your flare. So this is what we have after printing around our flare. And so that's basically it for this tutorial for today. So if you have any question, you can drop it at the comment section, and if you find this video useful, don't forget to subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and turn on your notification bell to get notified whenever we drop a new one. So I'm going to see you guys in my next one. Bye.